The candles on my 55th birthday cake flickered like tiny warnings I should have heeded. My living room buzzed with cousins, old friends, neighbors who'd watched me struggle through divorce and single fatherhood. I stood near the fireplace, watching everyone laugh and talk, feeling grateful they'd come. Then the front door opened and my daughter walked in. Rachel, 25 years old, sharp-eyed, carrying herself like she owned every room she entered. We hadn't spoken in 3 years. My heart jumped. Maybe she'd come to reconcile. She walked straight to the center of the room and the conversations died like someone had flipped a switch. "I need to say something," Rachel announced, her voice cold. She looked right at me. "You ruined my childhood." The room froze. I felt every eye turn toward me, waiting. "Rachel, what?" She cut me off. "I have proof, real proof of what you did." Then she turned and walked out, leaving me standing there like a convicted criminal at my own birthday party. The whispers started immediately, soft at first, then louder, threading through the room like poison. My cousin Bate touched my arm, uncertain. Near the kitchen doorway, I saw my ex-wife Diane smiling, this small, satisfied curve that made my stomach turn. She'd known Rachel would do this. The guests began gathering their coats within 20 minutes. I stood in my living room surrounded by half-eaten cake and abandoned cups, feeling decades of sacrifice collapse. I'd worked 2 jobs after the divorce. I'd driven 4 hours every other weekend just to see Rachel for a day. I'd sent every child support payment early, attended every school play I wasn't forbidden from. And this was my reward: humiliation. A daughter who believed I'd destroyed her, but I wouldn't let the story end this way. Tomorrow, I'd start searching for the truth behind her accusation, behind Diane's knowing smile, behind the proof Rachel claimed to have. I called Rachel the next morning. She answered on the 5th ring, her voice flat. "What do you want?" "I want to understand what you think I did." She laughed, bitter and sharp. "Think I know? Mom finally told me everything, how you were never there, how you cared more about work than me." My chest tightened. "Rachel, that's not, and I read things you wrote about me, your own words." I gripped the phone harder. "What things?" "Your journal from when I was 7, the year you walked away." My mind raced. I'd kept journals during those dark years, pouring my fears onto paper, but I'd never written anything cruel about Rachel. "Where did you get that? Does it matter? I finally see who you really are." Her voice cracked. "Don't call me again." The line went dead. I sat there realizing someone had weaponized my own words against me. I climbed into my attic that afternoon, pushing aside boxes until I found the cardboard box I hadn't opened in years. Inside were my journals, spiral-bound notebooks filled with messy handwriting. I pulled them out one by one, checking dates. 2008, 2009, 2010, the years right after the divorce when everything fell apart. I documented my struggles, nights I couldn't sleep, mornings I chose between gas money and groceries. I'd written about missing Rachel, about feeling like a failure as a father, but I'd never written anything cruel. I counted the journals twice. 2007 was missing. The year Rachel kept mentioning. The year she claimed I walked away. The year Diane had fought hardest to limit my visitation rights. I sat back, dust floating in the afternoon light. Someone had taken that journal, and I knew exactly who. The missing piece would prove everything. I drove to Diane's house on Tuesday. She answered in yoga pants and a defensive expression. "What are you doing here?" "We need to talk about Rachel." She crossed her arms. "There's nothing to talk about. She finally knows the truth." "The truth, or your version of it?" Her smile was thin. "My version is the only one that matters. I protected her from you. From a father who loved her. From a father who abandoned us." She said it like fact, like the lie had become real through repetition. "I worked 2 jobs to pay child support. That's not abandonment." Diane leaned against the doorframe. "You shouldn't have written things you didn't want found." My blood went cold. "You took my journal." She didn't answer, just smiled and closed the door. I stood on her porch, understanding settling over me. She hadn't just taken the journal. She'd edited it, twisted it, weaponized it against me. I called my old neighbor Patricia that evening. "What did Diane tell people about me after we separated?" Patricia hesitated. "She said you abandoned them, that you cared more about your career, that she raised Rachel alone." Even though I saw Rachel every other weekend, people believe what they want to believe, and Diane was very convincing. I closed my eyes, feeling years of silent character assassination. There's something else, Patricia added. Rachel's planning another confrontation. Something about a family brunch this Sunday. My stomach dropped. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the calendar. Sunday was 4 days away. Another public scene where Rachel would humiliate me, armed with edited journal entries and Diane's carefully constructed lies. But this time I'd be ready. This time I'd offer her something Diane never had, the complete, unedited truth. The brunch happened at my sister's house. Rachel sat stiff-backed at the dining table while my sister, my cousin, and 2 of Diane's relatives watched nervously. Rachel looked up when I entered, her eyes hard. "I'm glad you came. Everyone needs to hear this." I took a seat across from her, keeping my voice calm. "I'm listening." She pulled out her phone and started reading. "You wrote that I was exhausting, that some days you didn't want to deal with me, that you questioned whether fatherhood was worth it." I felt everyone's eyes on me. "Rachel, can you show me the full? You wrote that I reminded you of her, that looking at me hurt." "That's not what Your own words." Her voice shook with fury. I stayed silent, letting her anger fill the room. When she stopped, I spoke quietly. "Let me show you the full story." She froze. "What?" "Come to my house. Read everything, not edited pages, everything." The room went silent. Rachel stared at me. "Why would I waste my time?" "Because you deserve the truth, not your mother's version, not fragments, the whole truth." I could see her wavering. My sister spoke up gently. "Rachel, what if there's more to this?" "There isn't." But her voice lacked conviction. I pushed my chair back. "The invitation stands, no yelling, just you and me and the journals your mother didn't steal." Rachel's eyes flickered. Finally, she whispered, "One lie and I'm gone forever." I nodded. "That's fair." We set a time for the next evening. As I drove home, my hands shook. This was my only chance. If the truth didn't speak for itself, I'd lose my daughter forever. I spent that night organizing every journal, arranging them chronologically on my dining table. Let her see it all. Let the truth do what I never could. Rachel arrived at 6 o'clock, posture defensive, eyes suspicious. I'd set up the dining table with every journal except the missing one. She stood in the doorway like it might be a trap. "These are all of them. Everything except 2007, the year your mother took." She moved closer, running her fingers over the worn covers. I stayed in the kitchen doorway. "You can read anything you want. I'll be here if you have questions." Rachel picked up the first journal, dated January 2006, 3 months after the divorce. She opened it and began reading. I watched her face move through the pages. Initial skepticism, then confusion, then something softer. She read about how I'd cried the night I moved into my tiny apartment, about working overnight shifts so I could afford the nicer place Rachel would visit, about the guilt that ate at me every goodbye. An hour passed, then 2. She barely moved, absorbed in words I'd written in loneliness years ago. Rachel set down the third journal and looked up, her expression completely changed. "Why did you never tell me you were struggling?" I sat down across from her. "Because you were a child. My job was to protect you, not burden you. But I thought you just didn't care enough to fight for me. I fought for you every day, just not in ways you could see." She picked up another journal from 2008. I watched her read about the custody hearing where Diane's lawyer painted me as an absent workaholic. About how I'd wanted 50-50 custody but settled for less because Diane threatened a long battle. About nights I sat in my car outside her school just to glimpse her during weeks I couldn't have her. Rachel's hands trembled. "This doesn't match anything Mom told me." "I know. She said you chose work over me. I worked 2 jobs to support you. That's not the same as not wanting you." She looked at me then, really looked, and I saw her childhood self peeking through. Rachel flipped through more pages, then stopped abruptly. "Where's 2007? Your mother has it. That's the year she references most, the one she used to prove I abandoned you." "Why that year specifically?" I took a breath. "Because that was the hardest year, when I hit rock bottom, when I struggled the most, and when I fought hardest to stay in your life." Rachel's face shifted, something clicking. "She told me that was the year you walked away. That's the year I almost broke. But I never stopped trying." She stood suddenly, grabbing her coat. "We're getting that journal." I blinked. "What?" "We're going to Mom's house right now. I want to see what she's been hiding." The drive was tense and silent. Rachel stared out the window, jaw set with determination. When we pulled into the driveway, the porch light flickered on. The door opened before we could knock. Diane stood there, suspicion crossing her face when she saw us together. "What's he doing here?" Diane asked. "I need something from you," Rachel said firmly. "The journal from 2007, the one you took from him." Diane's face tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. Where is it?" "Rachel, honey, you don't understand. Stop lying." The words cut through the air. Diane flinched. "I'm not lying. I'm protecting you." "From what?" "From the truth." Rachel pushed past her into the house. "Where do you keep his things?" Diane grabbed her arm. "You can't just watch me." Rachel pulled free and headed upstairs. I stayed on the porch. Diane turned to me, voice desperate. "This is your fault. You're poisoning her against me." "I'm not poisoning anyone. I'm just letting the truth speak." She shook her head. "You always had to ruin everything." Rachel's voice called from upstairs. "Found it." Diane's face went pale. Rachel stood in the bedroom holding a worn journal, 2007 scrawled on the cover. "It was in your dresser drawer, hidden under old sweaters." Diane reached for it. "Give that to me." "No." Rachel stepped back. "You've lied enough." "I didn't lie. I protected you from what? From knowing my father loved me, from seeing how hard he fought, from understanding that you pushed him away." The accusation hung sharp and undeniable. Diane's mouth opened, then closed. "You kept it to protect yourself," Rachel continued, voice breaking, "so I'd never know the truth." I watched Diane's face crumble with the realization her narrative was falling apart. "I only kept it to protect you from him," she whispered, but even she didn't sound convinced. Rachel walked past us, journal in hand. At the door, she stopped. "I'm done letting you control the story." Then she left and I followed, leaving Diane alone with the wreckage of her lies. Back at my house, Rachel sat with the recovered journal in her lap, hands trembling. "Are you sure you want to read it?" I asked. "I need to know." I made coffee and sat across from her. She began reading and I watched emotions play across her face. Shock, confusion, then grief. The journal documented my depression that year, how I'd fallen behind on bills and slept in my car between shifts, how I'd cried in parking lots overwhelmed, how every Sunday after dropping Rachel off I'd wonder if I was strong enough to keep going. She read about the custody battle, how Diane's lawyer threatened to paint me as unstable, how I'd backed down not from weakness but because I couldn't risk losing Rachel completely. About the Father's Day when Rachel was 7 and didn't call because Diane had taken her out of town without telling me. Rachel's breath hitched. A tear rolled down her cheek. She turned a page and froze. "Dad," her voice came out strangled. She turned the journal toward me. I saw the page from after a brutal custody hearing, the one documenting Diane's threat. She'd said she'd fight me for full custody if I didn't back down. She'd drag out the case for years, drain us financially, make sure Rachel heard every ugly detail, and I'd written my response. I withdrew my petition today, not because I don't want her, but because putting her through a war would hurt her more than my absence. I hope someday she understands that loving her meant letting her have peace, even if it destroyed me." Rachel's hands shook. "She said you didn't want me enough to fight. I wanted you so much that I chose your stability over my happiness." She flipped another page and her face broke. Taped inside was a faded Father's Day card. Construction paper, crayon flowers, wobbly handwriting. "You're my hero, Daddy." Rachel pressed her hand over her mouth, sobbing. "I don't remember making this," Rachel choked out. "You gave it to me the last Father's Day before the divorce. I've kept it all these years." She traced the crayon flowers, tears streaming. "Why didn't you show me this before? Why didn't you fight back?" "Because fighting back would have meant dragging you into the middle, making you choose." She looked up. "So you just let me hate you. I let you have peace, even if it cost me everything." That broke her completely. She doubled over, clutching the journal and card, sobbing. I moved to the couch and pulled her into my arms. She clung to me like when she was small. "Dad, what have I done? What have I believed?" "You believed what you were told." "That's not your fault." She shook her head. "I ruined your birthday. I humiliated you. And now you know the truth. That's what matters." She looked at me with something that hadn't been there in years, trust. "I need to make this right. Everyone who heard me accuse you needs to know the truth." "Rachel, no, I did this publicly. I'll fix it publicly." Rachel organized the family meeting for the following Sunday. Same people, same living room. I helped her set up chairs, stomach tight. Are you sure about this? I've never been more sure. When everyone was seated, the room fell quiet. Rachel stood where she'd stood 2 weeks earlier, but everything about her was different. Thank you for coming. I owe my father an apology, and I owe all of you the truth. She held up the recovered journal. 2 weeks ago, I accused him of ruining my childhood. I said I had proof. I believed it because my mother spent years convincing me. The room shifted uncomfortably. But she lied about everything. She edited his journal entries. She kept the most important journal hidden. She spent 20 years poisoning me against him. My cousin Bate wiped her eyes. My father didn't abandon me. He worked 2 jobs to support me. He gave up custody he deserved because fighting would have hurt me more. She looked at me. He sacrificed his happiness to give me peace, and I repaid him by believing lies. People turned to me, waiting. I stood slowly. I don't need revenge. I never did. I only wanted my daughter to know the truth. My voice caught. Being a father means loving someone even when they can't love you back. It means protecting them even when it costs everything. And it means hoping that someday the truth will matter more than lies. Rachel sobbed openly. Several people wiped their eyes. I forgave Rachel the moment she walked into my house, because that took courage. Admitting you were wrong, facing the truth, that takes strength. I looked around. If you walked out on me that night, I understand, but I'm asking you now to judge me by the truth, not lies. The room erupted in emotion. Bate rushed to hug me, apologizing through tears. One by one, people approached, some apologizing, some offering support. Then the front door opened. Diane walked in. The room went silent. Diane stood in the doorway, defiant despite the tension. I have a right to be here. Rachel's my daughter too. Rachel's face hardened. You have no right anymore. Don't talk to me like that. I'm your mother. I protected you from what? From a father who loved me, from the truth. Rachel's voice cut like steel. You lied. You manipulated me. You stole his journal and edited it to make him look like a monster. Diane's eyes flickered around the room for support. She found none. I did what I thought was best. You lied, Rachel said flatly. Stop. I spoke quietly, but everyone turned. Just stop, Diane. You know exactly what you did. You couldn't control me during the marriage, so you controlled Rachel's perception after. You couldn't stand us being close, so you made sure we weren't. My cousin Bate spoke up. Your sister told me years ago you pushed for the divorce partly because your new boyfriend didn't want him around. Diane's face went white. Rachel gasped. What? You were dating someone during the separation, Bate continued. He didn't want shared custody, so you fought to minimize his time. When that relationship ended, you blamed him for everything. The truth hung in the air, ugly and undeniable. Diane opened her mouth, closed it. That's not. You don't understand. But everyone understood now. You need to leave, Rachel said, voice shaking but firm. No, honey, please. There's nothing to explain. You lied to me my entire life. Diane turned to me, desperate. Tell them it was just a misunderstanding. Tell them we both made mistakes. I looked at this woman I'd once loved. No, I won't lie, not to protect you. Healing can only come from truth, and you've spent 20 years running from it. Her face twisted with anger. Leave, Rachel interrupted. Now, or I'll call the police about the stolen journal. Diane looked around one last time, searching for an ally. She found none. With a choked sound, she turned and walked out. The door slammed. Rachel collapsed into a chair. I sat beside her. Is it over? She whispered. The lying, yes. The healing, that's just beginning. The next few weeks felt surreal. Rachel came over twice a week and we started rebuilding. It wasn't easy. Years of distance couldn't be erased overnight, but we tried. We talked about the past, the lies, the pain. We cried together. We laughed too. She brought her kids to meet me properly. My grandson, 7, climbed into my lap and asked me to read him a story. My granddaughter, 5, showed me her drawings with shy pride. I felt something I hadn't felt in decades, complete. Rachel apologized constantly, but I kept telling her the same thing. You were a victim too. You don't need to keep punishing yourself. She insisted on making amends. She wrote letters to everyone explaining everything. She called relatives with the truth. She even posted about it on social media. The responses were overwhelming. Old friends reached out. Former coworkers sent messages. Many had suspected Diane's story didn't add up. Diane stayed silent. No calls. No attempts at reconciliation. Rachel blocked her after she sent messages still refusing to take responsibility. "She'll never admit she was wrong," Rachel said sadly. "No, but that's her burden, not yours." 6 months later, Rachel helped me move into a bigger house. One with a room for her kids on weekends, one with a backyard for barbecues, a fresh start. As we unpacked, she found my old journals. "Are you going to keep writing?" "Actually, I started a new one." I pulled out a leather-bound journal, crisp and unused. "I thought we could start new memories, document the good stuff," she smiled. "Can I read the first entry?" I handed it to her. She opened to the first page. June 15th. Rachel brought the kids over. We made pancakes and played until dark. My grandson called me Grandpa for the first time. For 20 years, I wrote about pain and fighting for scraps of time. Today, I get to write about coming home, not to a place but to my daughter. The journals from those dark years held my truth when no one else would. Now I get to write about forgiveness, about rebuilding, about a daughter who chose truth over comfort. I don't need revenge. I just needed this, my daughter, my grandchildren, and a future that finally matches the love I've carried all along. Rachel closed the journal, tears streaming. Then she hugged me hard. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart. I always have." Outside, my grandchildren's laughter floated through the windows. The journals from those painful years sat in a box in the corner. I'd keep them as a reminder that truth has its own timeline, that love survives decades of lies, and that sometimes the words you write in darkness become the light that guides someone home. The story didn't end with revenge. It ended with justice through truth and reconciliation through courage. That was the happy ending I'd been waiting for all along.